Hey, Steve Smith.
Hello, Brett Starr.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day in Fort Worth, Texas. It's cooling off. It's been raining, and fall is on the way. So I'm feeling pretty good. How are things in St. Louis?
Today's a little humid and rainy, but it's going to be a perfect fall weekend. Very cool, and looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping back on again this week to talk about Work Tech Weekly. That will be going out on Friday. You circulate a version of it internally, usually 2 or 3 days before it goes out on the wire. Mm-hmm. And it always, like I said the last week when we got together, it's where I get all my news. And I just think that it was, chock full of so many interesting things. But what's in the issue this week? What are you going to be talking about?
There's so much stuff going on. I mean, the biggest challenge that we have is the fact that there's so much earth-shattering news that seems to be happening every day. I think that the right up there at the top is certainly the Microsoft acquisition of Ally for OKRs to fold into the Microsoft Viva employee experience platform. Certainly been getting a lot of questions about that throughout the week.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been getting a lot of, I'm sure this has happened to you as well, but I get a question about Microsoft Viva like every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, when it comes to, Microsoft, I think there is a wide range of emotions, out there from like abject fear and terror to like, a very opportunity, rooted perspective on what this means for the marketplace. And, but before I definitely want to, double click on Microsoft Viva and talk about that because I just think there's so much to explore that is even beyond the context of this most recent acquisition. Because it's funny, Microsoft Viva goes out and, they make an acquisition in the OKR or, performance management, continuous performance management, feedback and goals, whatever you want to call it. And that segment, gets crazy. Mm-hmm. But it's happened in multiple segments as they've announced different partners in learning and different partners in well-being. It's like, what does this mean for us? And is this bad or good or whatever? So there's so many things that I want to talk about there. But I thought it was kind of funny because, last week, like I just said, you always send out an internal version of this. Mm-hmm. And between the time that you sent out that internal version and then we talked the next day to record the podcast, by the time, it was ready to go out Friday, like 3 other huge things had happened that were,
Yeah.
So did you actually, because last week you said, well, look, it goes out on Friday and, it went out. Did you go back and add in, some of that stuff that happened or did it get bumped to this Friday?
No, I had to go back and add in stuff. And it was stuff like, I do some of the pre-work the week before, do a little work on Sunday, but it's just like, even like I was within an hour of going to send out this week, the big Personio deal was announced, the German HCM company. Yeah. And it's like, gosh, it is so hard just to kind of keep up with the goings on in the news. Although kind of back to your point on the Viva acquisition that I thought was really funny is people will text me or email me all the time when they see kind of news items. They say, hey, kind of what about this? But what's really kind of an interesting indicator is I got a few emails that were like just a question in an email and were obviously sent in such haste that they didn't bother to put in a subject line. And the fact that people who ordinarily complete thoughts and very kind of formal email etiquette are just kind of dashing out these questions, I thought was very indicative of how people kind of feel about this acquisition and just kind of how Viva really is top of mind in the market right now.
Well, there's so much fun stuff to talk about on that. I do have to, reference one other point in that, in the last conversation that we had and something you just said. You mentioned that, the company in Europe that, basically is not only like one of the largest work tech companies now, right, or most valuable work tech companies in Europe, but actually one of the largest and most valuable companies, period.
Yeah.
And, that's the way things are now. Like work tech is like the big fish.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't surprising to me. I think it's cool and interesting to talk about, but it wasn't surprising to me at all. I mean, I think of like Ireland, for instance, and you've got WorkHuman in Ireland, and they're a unicorn. And so, I think that's probably one of the highest valued, businesses in Ireland. And so, and you see that in the U.S. as well. And it's just, we've been doing this for a long time. It's just crazy to see work tech at the, top of the food chain.
Well, and it's interesting also. There's just so many really innovative and interesting work tech companies coming out of France right now.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's sort of like PeopleDoc was the one that sort of blazed the trail. And now it's just like you've got, PayFit and like last week, Swile. And just there's like a dozen, like just, explosive growth, really interesting companies that are coming out of that ecosystem.
It's really interesting. I love Swile. I love the idea behind Swile. Most people won't get Swile, and you mentioned that. But we did a lot of work with Sodexo back in the day. And, we know that, the benefits market and, all around the world, like in Brazil, for instance, employers are required to provide one meal a day to employees. And most of that's done on stored value cards or whatever. And so one of the things that Sodexo was extremely successful at in a short period of time, like a decade, was basically getting every restaurant around the world. You would walk up and see the Michelin stars or the Zagat or the, like what the decals that are usually on, a restaurant door. And if you were in Europe or in South America or something, you'd also see a Sodexo, sticker on the door. And that meant that you could use your Sodexo card in there. And so, that's a long tradition, and, there's some very disruptive things going on there. But it also reminds me of our multiple. How many times have we been to Europe together? Oh, my God.
A dozen.
I can't remember half the trips.
I know,
but,
right.
We were going to France and saw a lot of stuff happening in France a long time ago. And, it's not surprising to me at the same time that, it's cool to see so much innovation coming out of France. But, our roots in France go all the way back to Mr. Ted and Jerome. Yeah, who's now, running Smart Recruiters. And, I just think that when you really start, double clicking on all these, different areas of innovation around the world, there's just so many pockets that, most people aren't aware of. And so it seems like they come out of nowhere. But even, 7 or 8 years ago when we were going to Europe, there were a lot of companies coming out of, France and stuff like that were at the beginning of that wave of innovation.
Well, what I think is really interesting also about specifically kind of European work tech companies that are, as they begin to kind of blow up on the global stage, and they have to, they've been big in Europe and they have to break into the North America market. There's such a chasm that they have to jump over just in terms of their marketing style, because everything is so much more kind of like PR focused and indirect in Europe, and they really, and American companies get it the opposite. They try to take an American style to Europe, and it just like run it into a brick wall because they hate the hard charging, hey, buy my stuff kind of approach. And it's just the opposite. It's so, these European companies, they always struggle for usually 18 to 24 months because they're trying to run that indirect, I'm not going to ask for a sales conversation approach. And their numbers are just horrible. And then they're like, hey, what do we have to do? It's just like, well, you got to put on the cowboy hat and get the big foam number 1 finger, and you got to go out and sell some shit. And eventually they figure that out.
That brings back so many good memories of, it's like times that we went to Europe and, we would hang out with the person who had been sent there to develop, some, part of Europe.
Yeah.
And that was the model, 10 years ago or, even 20 years ago. And, we've been all around the world. We've been all over the country. And there are different cultures, even from like state to state in terms of like, the executive culture and the marketing culture and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's also, the thing that I'll always remember is on one of our trips to London, I think it was. Yeah, it was definitely London. We had like 23 meetings in like 4 days.
Yeah.
And this was really before, the UK had all of these amazing, big players that they have now. But they had, there was enough people there that we met with like over 20 companies that run the work tech field. And we came away on the last day from that meeting thinking that we had probably closed like 15 deals because like every single one of those meetings was just fantastic. And, and then we didn't close a single deal.
Right. I know. Like, what the hell happened?
And then like 2 years later, they all started to come into our universe.
Yeah.
And, that's just how long it takes, which, I think it's, there are definitely cultural nuances wherever you're working, but I think there's also something powerful to be said there about engagement and engaging.
Yeah.
And, having conversations without expecting a direct sales outcome. Because if you stick around long enough, a lot of the people that and meet, you'll end up working with in the future. But
well, and I think that it kind of points to, the customer experience model that is now so prevalent, and lots of people are beginning to whiteboard and work up methodologies and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, that was sort of, we were doing it. We just didn't know we were doing it, because it's just like, you go in, let's have a conversation. I'm not trying to sell you a bunch of shit. I'm not going to roll the pin at the end of this, but let's just have a conversation, be real, give away some value. Yeah. And I think that the affirmation that was the right approach, it was a long tail, but like 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, people looping back and saying, hey, I remember that conversation we had, and it really struck me that you said X, Y, Z. And so I know that that's sort of like, customer experience model, as kind of the front end really does work, because it's just like, that's the entire experience that ideally we want customers to have when they're engaging with our brand.
Yeah, I've always thought that our ignorance was our greatest asset.
Oh yeah,
our lack of experience, not knowing how things should be done.
Oh yeah,
just doing it the way that we
were really good at that.
Yeah, and we still are in many ways. But to your point, then we should get to Microsoft Viva, because that's what everyone really wants to talk about.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember having a conversation with someone who is a very influential member of the work tech community right now. I'm not going to say his name because he'll get mad at me. But I had a conversation with him, and I thought it was great. And we always enter conversations, or we do these like 3-4 hour meetings with people and just give away value, and we have fun doing it, and we learn things. And I remember walking away from that conversation thinking, oh, that guy wasn't like super engaged, but I sure liked him a lot. And then like 2 years later, he comes back and he has this napkin that was sitting on the board on the table where we were meeting, and he had written down like 3 of our models, and he said that he had like kept that on his desk for like the last 2 years and was just waiting for the right moment to work with us. And so I think just having that abundance mindset of trying to help people, and going into it not acting like everything, but that you also want to learn, has served us very well over the years. And
so yeah, we learn a lot more in those conversations as anything. It's just like you have to go in and just hey, what can I get out of this in terms of reframing the way that I think.
Well, and it's one of the biggest problems in B2B is that everyone is super focused on purchase intent, and they want to aim all of their resources at somebody who wants to buy something, and if they don't think somebody has the budget, authority, et cetera, and has an active need and a time frame to buy something, they don't want to spend time with those folks in a traditional B2B context.
Right.
And that's where all the value is. That's where, you're building, that engagement and all that stuff. And so I think the world's coming around to that and understanding that. And so, I'm definitely seeing a lot of, kind of more conversations happening instead of like, agendas. And so, that's a good thing. So Microsoft Viva. Let's talk about Microsoft Viva.
Viva la Viva.
What the hell is going on with Microsoft Viva? That's a terrible lead-in.
Yeah, that's a terrible lead-in. Everything. I mean, they've kind of really quickly become the 18,000-pound gorilla in employee experience, and it's just like employee experience being this thing that is so large that it's almost meaningless. They really have kind of provided some gravity around the center of that galaxy.
Oh. So I've got to, I can't not say this. When was the first time that you remember us identifying the fact that there was going to be an integrated employee experience platform market and mapping what the categories were that were, going to be moving in that direction? And
2012.
2012. And I think maybe in 2012 we were talking about it more in terms of engagement, and then at some point we changed our language a little bit to experience. And so here we are now, and I think it's also worth pointing out that we talk a lot about market development, and markets start with a lot of component-based solutions. Those components grow into category-based solutions. Eventually, the categories start blending with adjacent categories and pursuing that kind of platform position. And then the really big companies come, knocking and buy their way into the innovation that they missed over the last 10 years,
right?
Like going all the way back to like the integrated talent management motion. And so we kind of saw all of that, coming to pass. And when the Microsoft Viva announcement, I just thought was fantastic, because it basically marked the beginning of the migration from the category stage of the market to the platform stage of the market.
Yeah.
And so, we've seen this all before. I mean, anybody who wants to know what impact this is going to have or what it means, the employee experience platform market was firmly established as, a real thing when Microsoft Viva came out. And now we've probably got about 5 to 7 years of, people vying for leadership at the employee experience level before, the really big companies come in and, buy them, like, SAP bought SuccessFactors, and like Oracle bought Taleo, and, on and on and on. So, we kind of knew this moment was coming. I didn't think it would be Microsoft that, kind of made the category. Did you?
No, I mean, it didn't seem like it was headed that direction, but, they sort of took an outside-in approach because they built everything else. They had Office, they had Outlook. Then, Teams became the fastest-growing product in the history of Microsoft, and that was even before March of 2020. And then after that, it was just turbocharged the growth. But they had that. They had the Skype acquisition. They had LinkedIn. They bought Glint. I mean, they've been like they bought lynda.com. They've been building and building and building, and it's funny because when you go and you do a briefing with somebody from Microsoft, you see these very grandiose plans. You're like, wow, that is really fucking cool. But it's going to take you forever to get there. And it's just everything moves at a very glacial pace. But it's just kind of now getting to the point where the momentum is finally there. And it's just like the vision is truly becoming a reality.
Well, and timing's everything, right? So, after years of making acquisitions, everyone was like, is Microsoft getting into the work tech space? Like, this has been going on for like the last, 10 years. Is Microsoft getting into the work tech space? Only we didn't call it work tech 10 years ago.
No.
But it's like they already are, and everyone, I think, had this perception that they were buying all these, companies in a very like, non-strategic way, and weren't, integrating them to their, kind of maximum benefit. But timing's everything. I mean, they had everything ready to go when the pandemic hit, and it became, obvious that we were in the middle of a new organizing principle where the focus was going to be on employee experience, more than kind of this command and control, driven paradigm of, the old school performance management, the old school talent acquisition, the old school learning and development, everything. They had all the pieces in place. And what they, I think, have that people underestimated, and I know this is one of your favorite topics too, is they're the largest productivity platform on the planet. And so everything's about the flow of work now. And as you know, this new organizing principle is taking shape in the market, which I believe is about, people are coming up with dumb things, like
They don't stop.
Oh gosh, I saw somebody post yesterday that's like, would you please stop writing articles about the Great Resignation?
Yeah.
And I was like, I totally agree with that. That is not the organizing principle. That is like a watered down war for talent type message that doesn't really touch.
It's a scarcity mindset.
Yeah, it is a scarcity mindset. It doesn't touch the significant society-wide shift that we're going through. And so I think the organizing principle is more about decentralization. Mm-hmm. And, I think people are moving in every aspect of their life to, more, it's probably semi-decentralized organizations, semi-autonomous organizations. We're not talking about crypto companies that are DAOs and all that stuff. We're talking about normal companies who are becoming more decentralized, more autonomous, but it's happening at every level. And what Microsoft has is they sew everything together because they can just put it right on, all of those, productivity platforms that you just talked about.
Right.
So,
but I think what's also interesting is I agree with you around decentralization, but what I'm kind of curious to see and what I've been getting a lot of questions about is, okay, so Microsoft acquires an OKR platform. What does that do for all of these other OKR platforms that have raised, hundreds of millions of dollars a piece? There's a lot of investment, and that may be the reddest of the red ocean categories in work tech. Does that completely blow up that entire market? And
what do you think?
I don't think it does. I think it changes the game. I think that what you're going to see happen is that old CFO conversation of, why are we buying this OKR platform? Because it's already in our instance of Microsoft. Why don't we just use what they have? Mm-hmm. And I think that, there's going to be different flavors for different organizations and different areas of need. But I also kind of feel like because of that move that you're going to see OKRs in some way end up being commodified. Yeah, is sort of my take. What about you?
I don't know. It's interesting. I'm conflicted about it because we all know that no one can have 100% market share. So
right.
I think the first point that you brought up, I totally agree with. Which is we all need this and we all want this. People may not know that or feel that, but we need someone with the kind of gravity of Microsoft to help establish the platform, the transition into the platform stage of this market development. Mm-hmm. But what we know from experience is that it's going to spin off 15 or 20 other big power players. Yeah. At that level, and I think it's going to throw off, multiple acquisitions, multiple partnerships, and so I see it as a good thing. If anything, so I have a problem with OKRs specifically.
I think OKRs are bullshit.
Well, I won't go that far.
I will.
I think that
I will take an extreme position on this.
Well, the problem that I have with OKRs is that it's one way, And for some reason, people are kind of very cultish about, OKRs as a style of performance management. Mm-hmm. But there's multiple styles, and, different companies are going to have different cultures. Right. And they're going to prefer different types of solutions that can still be performance management and goals and feedback oriented and all that stuff that don't have anything to do with OKRs.
Right.
So, I think that the notion of being able to, kind of set up some cascading, aligned goals is probably going to be commodified.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the primary value of a good performance management system anymore.
Well, and I guess the thing about it is just to, be serious and not just intentionally inflammatory, taking an extreme position. I think that the problem with OKRs is it's hard, and it's not so much OKRs as it is goal alignment and cascading goals. Mm-hmm. I believe that business is moving too fast and has been moving. This is not just a 2020 thing. This has been true for better part of the last decade. The speed of business just it turns goal setting and goal alignment into sort of this exercise where it really becomes misaligned and non-relevant to the business. You're just kind of doing it because you think that this is what a good business is supposed to do. And you can't say, oh, no, we don't align goals, because you would sound freaking crazy if you went out as any large employer and said that. But the truth is just like, I don't know how relevant a lot of these goals are in a lot of organizations. And I think that as the basic unit of work becomes the team, I think there's some value in kind of getting team goals aligned. But I don't think that that's necessarily transacted best in sort of a goal conversation. I think it's more of a coaching and feedback conversation.
Yeah, it reminds me. So I have a problem with a label. That's
Yeah, me too.
It reminds me a lot of agile. And so this person over here says we're agile, and then this company over here says they're not agile. They don't know anything about it. Do you have Scrum? Do you have et cetera, et cetera? And then, so everyone has a different view of like how agile works, right? And like how the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And I think it's very similar with OKRs. I don't think that, the OKR style is necessarily, works against agile goal setting and creating more autonomy and allowing creativity and stuff like that. But some people who have like religion around OKRs believe that if you do not have the interlocking goal set that aligns from top to bottom in the organization, then you're doing it wrong. And I think unfortunately that's just kind of an unfair characterization of what you can do with technologies like that and with systems like that. I mean, you can bend them to your culture. I think the thing that you have to be careful of, which we've experienced as owners, and we've seen in hundreds of clients, is be careful what software you buy because it can have a dramatic impact on your culture because it has cultural notions built into it. Mm-hmm. So I think it ultimately, I don't think people. I think that people in the performance management space, continuous performance management, goals and feedback, OKRs, whatever flavor you want to refer to. You want to use to refer to this new way of thinking about goal setting, they should be jumping up and down with joy right now instead of afraid. Yeah. Because in my view, what Microsoft Viva just did was establish the fact that performance management fits into the employee experience in an integrated way with all the other stuff, that they kind of led with. So I think that that's just going to, open people up to this kind of natural motion that happens at this stage of market development, which is people start to value integration over the depth of functionality in any single category, and they just want all this stuff to work together. So I think it's going to open up tons of opportunity, and I think that segment is going to grow tremendously. Yeah. What else is going on?
One of the, I think, headlines that kind of got lost in the shuffle last week that I thought was interesting was another funding event. It was the Mom Project getting $80 million.
Yeah, talk about that. I saw that. That really stood out to me as well. What's going on with the Mom Project?
I think that the one of the key themes going on in the workplace today is just how difficult work is for women and working moms specifically, and how they are under just a whole different level of pressure than men in the workplace, just to be completely blunt about it. But also it's just like the, and specifically kind of the way that they're approaching it is, what do you do if you are a working mom who wants to get off of the work track for a few years, but then wants to get back on as kids go, get to the point where they can go back to school, and you want to, and it's just like when you get off of that kind of like career trajectory, it's hard to kind of get plugged back in. And I think that they have a really fantastic solution, and not only just a cool solution, but a very well marketed solution in terms of addressing something that is very much of the moment and kind of in tune with the zeitgeist now. So
yeah, and they have the right the type of origin story that I like to see that's associated with companies that succeed. Yeah. And the spark was, it's all purpose driven.
Yeah.
It started at a very like community, level of people helping each other out, and they've just continued to build on kind of that core purpose and, execute in more sophisticated ways. And, I'll also say that, I've done a lot of research over the past couple of years on role theory and role strain. And, when things get bad, like during the pandemic and everything, they always get worse for, women, and they always get worse for people of color and, all kinds of, different groups that, that just don't have the same, opportunities or privilege that some of us just kind of walk into because of, the accident of our birth. And, one of the primary things that we all saw happening and that we experienced was that role strain. So you have these social roles, and like you identify as I am a worker, I am a father, I am a whatever, and you have to give time to each one of these roles, and they kind of go back and forth in terms of where you need to spend your time. But the role strain that exists between someone being a mother and everything that came along with that during the pandemic. And also, their role at work, that strain was, way more significant than many of us experienced. And, it's just any solution that is focused on that is something that is badly needed, because it's not like it, people write about it in the papers like that happened and it's over.
Yeah.
That's not the case. It's still really, really hard. And so I was really happy to read that.
Well, and I think sort of in a related note, just a topic that's been coming up is more and more is just like, hey, you know what? 2021 for some reason is a lot harder than 2020.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's just, having to kind of live in this reality and just becoming aware that, we're not going to wake up one day and everything's going to be the way it was in 2019.
No, and I think it's going to take years for people to understand what we've been through and to see how things shake out. But until you have time to really reflect on it and think about what you've been through, I think, and many of us, just haven't had the opportunity to do that in a significant way because we've been just trying to survive and get through and, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I think the profound level of change that we've experienced and the profound level of stress that we've experienced during the last 2 years is going to appear sharper in retrospect than it does right now when we're inside the tornado.
Yeah. Well, another interesting thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is something that we talk about internally is how do you make sure that you are maintaining a strong, vibrant culture when you have a distributed hybrid workforce. And, sometimes it's just like, you wonder, it's just like, are we the only ones thinking about this? And this past weekend, I went to a wedding for the first time in like a year and a half. And I was talking to one of my friends here in St. Louis, who is the CEO of a large local nonprofit, has several hundred employees. And I was asking her, I was like, what is your biggest, kind of work business challenge right now? And she was like, it's maintaining a strong culture with a team that I can't get in the office at the same time. And I was just really, really interested to hear her talk about it and unpack that, because I realized just how pervasive and ongoing that issue really is.
Yeah, it's a delicate thing, that, the way it works, the way culture works, the things that drive it, are poorly understood by most.
Yeah.
And it's easier to see the absence of it, or, kind of to see it degrading without really knowing why. But in the context that we've been in for the past couple of years, the reasons are pretty obvious. And, I hope that what comes out of this is that when we see what impact the pandemic has had on the way we work and the impact that it's had on cultures, that we start to understand how culture works better, because it has been kind of cast in sharp relief by the conditions that we've been under. So I think a lot of good's going to come out of it, but it's painful sometimes to get to the good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool, man. I look forward to speaking with you next week. We're going to talk a lot between next week, but we'll be on camera next week again and talking about whatever other 80 acquisitions and funding announcements and major mind-blowing blockbuster things happen between now and next week. But as always, good talking to you.
Good talking to you.
And I'm going to hit the stop button.